Hello and good morning to all of you. This is Dr. Mohammad Arif, and today we will continue on with the topic that we had previously initiated. It was about the research, basic introduction to the research and research gap and the literature review. We will try to explore today some other fields related to this one, to this topic, so that further things become clarified to you guys, and you become easy to understand those things. So just as a recap, we will start with the from the we will start from the literature review. So we discussed a literature review last time, and I explained the literature review with an example of a brick. I said, for example, this is a brick. So you go through the literature and you find out that some of the authors have explained it from the right side, some have explained it from the left side, some have explained it from the top side, and some have explained it from the bottom side. Unfortunately, there are certain points that are not being covered by any literature. So these gaps are said to be as literature gaps. Literature gap. And this literature gap is what will lead to your research question. This will lead to your research question formation. So after going through all of these factors, let us now further explore the different types of literature gaps that a reviewer or a person can identify in the literature while going through literatures. So basically there are 8 types of literature gaps. So we will be discussing them one by one. The first kind of literature gap that is seen is called empirical. Empirical gap. Now, what does empirical gap mean? Actually, the empirical gap is said to be identified when we see a limited number of studies that are being actually tested, that have actually tested the hypothesis. For example, you are working on a topic on which very few people have worked. So there is a gap. This gap will be called as empirical gap. The next type of gap, literature review gap, is called theoretical gap. Now, theoretical gap basically explains It basically means that there might be an absence of comprehensive modules to guide the researcher in the field. For example, absence of standardized literature or guide means there is a gap, and that gap is defined as theoretical gap. So there are a lot of articles or topics where, for example, you deal into the field of psychology, or you go into the field of sociology, social norms, or medical ethnography, and medical anthropology, where you try to assess the impact of culture on the human beings in social life. So all of those topics which are related to the socialization and other such things like human psyche and behavior, these topics really there is a no standardized literature and guideline that can help you, even though you can find the papers on them, but those papers, you find that there is no standardized literature for that one. So your main aim in addressing this theoretical gap would be to come to the conclusion and develop something for the future generations to come. So the third type of gap we think is methodological gap. Now, what does methodological gap mean? This type of gap arises when there is an insufficient or outdated research methods available for studying a particular subject. Or the reviewer might notice this when he or she is reviewing the article. For example, any topic, scientific method applied to that is old enough that can be discarded in terms of the new literature and new research. So methodological gaps, after going through all those literatures, you can say that the methods used by the writer is old school and it is outdated. So it must be revised, and the hypothesis must be retested with new techniques so that this gap is addressed. The next type of gap that is there is called temporal gap. Now, temporal gaps involve a lack of recent or up-to-date information on a topic. This happens when there is a significant change or development in the field, but the literature hasn't caught up with these changes. This temporal gap was especially faced by medical researchers in recent outbreak of the COVID-19. Being one of them, as a public health consultant and researcher, day by day there were new our literature was far behind than the developments that were occurring in the field. So temporal gap is basically the literature is far behind than the developments that are occurring on the ground. So the information is not up to date on the topic, so we have to up to date it. Or you review an article that was 1 month in December 2019, or it was January 2020 it was published about the COVID-19, but with the passage of time, as the outbreak developed, so new changes occurred in the cause of events. So those cause of events were really causing those researches to be old school, because the developments were very quick in those sessions. Anyhow, we will continue on to the other ones. The fifth is the geographical gap. For example, a certain type of hypothesis is being tested in a specified population, or in a specified continent, in a specified people. This would definitely mean that you are not including all the human beings or all the universe into your research work. You are just focusing your theories, your results, just on a particular type of group of people, or continent of people, or province of people. So this gap is called geographical gap, and researcher may identify this gap when he notices that studies are primarily focused on certain geographical areas while neglecting the others. So whenever you select a topic and you find out that this topic is basically fixed to some sort of I will give an example from the health. For example, the HIV, we focus our attention towards the transgenders, the sexually active peoples, and also towards the intravenous drug users. But we know the repercussions if once this virus outflows from this specified population into the general population, what will happen. So this is important. So we have to explore the presence of these researches as well into the natural population as well. So the sixth, we'll continue with the sixth type. The sixth one is interdisciplinary gap. Interdisciplinary. Now, interdisciplinary gaps occur when there is a need of collaboration between the different fields of study, especially in when it comes to the public health, because we know that social determinants affect the longevity and life of the people. So all the different things come together for the support of a single idea. So this gap, you find that the different fields are working independent of one another. This gap suggests that existing research might be too narrow, and that insight from other disciplines could be beneficial. So until or unless we don't approach the one approach, or we don't tackle it collectively, we will be facing this problem. The seventh type of research gap is the conceptual gap. I'm sorry for my writing, but conceptual gaps arise when key concepts or terms in the field lack clear definitions, or are used inconsistently. This can hinder effective communication and understanding among the researchers as well. Now, this is a very common, you can say, problem or gap, especially when you are analyzing the policies. For example, you are analyzing the health policies, and you are also analyzing the health laws. So we call it the policy surveillance. So health policy surveillance would definitely give you the conceptual gaps, because if a policy is being developed, so it might be interpreted differently by different listeners or the readers. So we have to see that how people are perceiving your policies or your frame of reference, whether they are understanding the same point of view as you are discussing, or they are making some other sense out of that one. So these conceptual gaps occur, especially when literature is heavily bombarded with terms and that are needing explanation. So in those cases, we basically find that this conceptual gap basically occurs whenever you are doing a policy research or policy surveillance. How effective is that one, and how the people are being responsive to your policies. So this gap is basically in this field of science. The last and the eighth type of research gap is the ethical or social gap. Ethical or social gap. Now, ethical and social gap means that sometimes there might be a gap in the literature related to the ethical or social consideration, such as the impact of the research on society, privacy, concern, or other ethical dilemmas. So, whenever a reviewer or researcher identifies this gap, they believe that these aspects needs more attention. So, might be something that is ethical in one society, in one social group of people. It might not be acceptable to the other one. So ethical gap exists over there. So. So this was our today's topic. We discussed about the different types of literature gaps, and I told you that commonly there are about 8 literature gaps. Sorry for my writing. The first one is empirical gap. We discussed it, that this gap exists when there is lack of real world data or experiments on a particular topic. Then we have theoretical gap. The theoretical gaps means that there might be an absence of comprehensive module to guide the researcher in the field. Then we discussed about the methodological gaps, that the researcher might notice this when the existing methods are not suitable for addressing the new questions or challenges. So methodological gaps. Temporal gaps, we discussed it. It happens when there has been significant change in development into the field. I discussed about the COVID situation, how it was being. A geographical gap is you focus into one area, and the interdisciplinary gap was that for every topic to approach, there must be coordination between the different sectors of life, so intersectoral. So conceptual gap, we discussed that it can hinder the communication and understanding among the researchers. So different people are apprehending or understanding your policy words or literature or law in a different way. So it is being perceived in a different way. Then that creates a conceptual gap which needs to be clarified by the researcher. Ethical and social gaps: sometimes there might be a gap in the literature related to the ethical or social considerations. So researcher may identify this gap when they believe these aspects needs more attention. So here I conclude my today's lecture, and hope that we will continue it further, and you will learn further as well. So for the time being, goodbye. Please kindly subscribe the channel, press the bell icon, and press the like button. It will really encourage me to upload different other topics in this context. So thank you very much.